Let's build a Grafana dashboard to monitor time series sensor data with Viam. You'll need a machine connected to the Viam app with a configured sensor component. I have a Raspberry Pi with an air quality sensor. You'll also need to install the Viam CLI. To use the MongoDB plugin for Grafana, you'll need either a free or paid version of Grafana Cloud or an on-prem instance of Grafana Enterprise. I'll be using a free trial of Grafana Cloud. Let's start by capturing and syncing data in Viam. Let's add a service for data management. Create and save. Next, let's configure data capture for our sensor. Under the Configure tab, let's find our sensor. Under Data Capture, we'll add a new method to enable data capture for the sensor. So select a method of readings and input a frequency to capture data from the sensor about every 3 seconds, and save. Let's go to the Options menu and view our captured data to make sure that we set it up properly. When you sync captured data to Viam, this data is stored in the Viam organization's MongoDB Atlas Data Federation instance. Next, let's configure a data query in Viam so that we can both query the data and so that Grafana can access that data and visualize it. So let's get our credentials to connect to a third-party service and authenticate with the Viam CLI using a personal access token. Let's find our organization ID to create a new database user to access our data. This is going to be the organization where you have your active machine and configured sensor. Then we'll configure a new database user for the Viam organization's MongoDB Atlas Data Federation instance using our org ID and a new password. If you've done this step before, changing this password can break existing integrations for your organization, so be very careful here. Now let's get our hostname and connection URI. Most MQL-compatible database clients require the connection URI along with your user credentials to connect to the server, but the MongoDB plugin for Grafana requires a hostname and database name along with your user credentials to connect. All right, now let's configure the MongoDB data source in Grafana. From the Grafana web UI, under Connections, add a new connection and search for MongoDB. We'll select MongoDB under the Data Source section. Make sure you're installing the MongoDB data source and not the integration. And we'll add this new data source. This takes us to the Settings tab where we'll need to set up our MongoDB configuration. For the name, we can go ahead and rename it. This is how we're going to refer to the data source in panels and queries. Under Connection, we'll add our connection string. You'll want to make sure you update your database host name from the previous step, and also update a database name. For most use cases with Viam, this database name will be sensor data. Under Authentication, select Credentials. For the user, you can input db-user-your organization ID. For password, you'll enter the password you provided earlier. And at the very bottom of the settings page, click Save and Test to verify that the plugin has been set up properly. All right, now that our data source has been added, our connection established, it's time to build our dashboard. So under Dashboards, we'll find New Dashboard, and we have an empty dashboard. Let's add a visualization. Select the name for our data source, and we can write a query in either MQL or SQL. This is MongoDB query language. This particular query searches the sensor data database and readings collection and gets readings from an air quality sensor called PMS7003_sensor, and it filters on fine particulate matter with a diameter of 2.5 or 10 micrometers, what I personally care about. So we'll run this query and confirm the graph displays on top. If that was a little bit quick, I'll drop a link to step-by-step instructions in the description below, as well as other resources to query and transform your data using Viam and other third-party tools.